The stars watched in silence as the last fragments of hope drifted between fractured moons and hollowed out husks of what used to be worlds. Commander Alira Vaz stood at the shattered viewport of the inevitable light, her breath fogging the cracked glass as the remnants of her fleet pulsed weak signals in the black. The resistance was dying, not metaphorically, not strategically, literally. Oxygen reserves were thinning. Power cells failing. Morale had already bled out weeks ago. "Report," she said without turning. Captain Saran's voice crackled through the internal comms. 3 ships remaining. Minimal weapons. Shields offline. We've lost contact with the Very Star. That made 2 more gone since yesterday. The Very Star had carried over 200 evacuees. Children. Scientists. Not soldiers. Alira clenched her jaw until it ached. Thalzar? They're triangulating. We won't make another jump before they're on us. Of course not. That would be too merciful. She finally turned. The bridge was dim, running on emergency lights. Screens flickered with static or scrolled unreadable diagnostics. Her crew sat in silence, not working, just waiting. As if death itself had already taken a seat at the helm. In the center of the room, the old transmitter stood like a relic from another age. It wasn't part of any known network, had no recognizable origin in any Star Nation's tech. It was dug from the ruins of the lost world of Elos Prime years ago. It bore no power core, yet it hummed when touched. The tech priests called it a Terran beacon. A myth. A joke. A desperation tale for children and revolutionaries. And now, her final card. Alira stepped toward it. Her fingers hovered over the activation runes, non-standard, ancient. Her voice, when it came, was low. "I'm going to send it." Saran appeared beside her, face pale. "Commander, even if it is Terran, even if they exist, what makes you think they'll answer? Let alone help?" Alira didn't answer immediately. Her gaze drifted across the stars outside, the very stars that had once seemed so vast, so full of promise. Now they looked like indifferent witnesses to a funeral. "I don't think they'll help," she said finally. "But I think they'll be angry." Saran frowned. "At us? At what's been done?" She tapped the sequence. The runes lit, one by one, with a slow, pulsating red. The transmitter came to life, humming low like a predator waking from a long sleep. It reached into subspace, into some channel no longer charted, abandoned by the civilized galaxy. She spoke into it. "To the Terrans, if any remain. This is Alira Vaz of the Last Free Worlds Coalition. We are dying. The Thalzar have wiped out everything we built, everyone we loved. We have no more weapons. No more time. No allies left. But we remember the stories. The ones about you. How you answered betrayal with fire. How you vanished after the war, but not before teaching the galaxy fear. If even a fragment of you still exists, if you can still hear us, come. Make them remember." The moment she stopped speaking, the red pulse became a deep, steady thrum. The transmitter had no interface, no way to confirm delivery. It simply began. The frequency emitted felt ancient, unnatural. The kind of sound that didn't echo in air, but in the bones. Saran swallowed. "And if they come for us next? Then at least we won't die alone." 12 hours later, nothing had changed. The fleet drifted. No reply. No salvation. No fire from the stars. "Signal might not have reached," murmured Navigation Officer Kale. "Or maybe they're just gone." Alira sat in her chair, staring at the blank holoscreen. She hadn't moved since sending the message. Her fingers tapped slowly on the armrest. She didn't believe in myths. She believed in tactical superiority, morale, and orbital cannons. But she'd seen the ruins at Elos. The cities fused into black glass, the war machines buried a mile deep in hardened rock. The Thalzar called it the wound in the galaxy. A planet no weapon could have destroyed, yet it had burned from the inside out. The legends said the Terrans had done it in a day. Then they disappeared. Another hour passed. Kale's console beeped once. Then again. Then it screamed. Unidentified objects emerging from subspace, he yelled. Multiple, 12, no, 18 vessels. Approaching fast. Configuration doesn't match any known registry. Alira stood. Show me. The main holoscreen flickered to life, showing a field of silent giants slipping through the void. The ships were monolithic, blunt, brutal in design. No curves, no insignias, no sleek alloys. Just cold, scarred hulls, dark as the space around them. Weapons bristled from their frames like thorns. They're hailing us. The bridge went quiet. Alira nodded once. A voice crackled through. Male. Deep. Controlled. Human. Message received. This is Vanguard Vessel Erebus, acting under Terran Directive Omega. Request identification and location of hostile forces. Your call has been acknowledged. Stand by. No ceremony. No diplomacy. Just a response, fast, precise, undeniable. Saran sat down hard. By the stars, they're real. Kale was still staring at the screen. What are those ships made of? Alira didn't answer. Because now, she saw the forward guns of the Terran fleet pivot, targeting coordinates deeper in the system. The Thalzar were coming. And humanity was already aiming. Alira Voss watched the Terran dreadnoughts maneuver like silent mountains in orbit. They didn't shimmer like Thalzar cruisers or cut through space with elegant distortion. They loomed, heavy, black, brutish things with no desire to impress. These ships weren't built to be admired. They were built to end wars. Commander, Kale said, his voice tight. They're scanning our fleet. Not weapons hot, just thorough. Let them, Alira replied. They could vaporize us if they wanted. A skin isn't the threat here. Saran leaned against her console, stunned. They responded. That fast. From wherever they were. We didn't even chart the direction. Subspace fracture, murmured Kale, still studying the data. They didn't travel here. They emerged, like they've been watching this sector. Watching or waiting, Alira said. Her eyes locked on the central ship, the Erebus. No insignia. No windows. No emotion. It had the personality of a tombstone. The bridge dimmed as the second hail came through. Thalzar vessels detected. Formation, Hammerhead Assault Cluster. Time to contact, 12 minutes. Local forces stand by. Engage in no hostile action. This theater is now under Terran jurisdiction. Kale raised an eyebrow. Jurisdiction? They don't ask permission, Alira said, almost admiringly. They just decide. Saran frowned. Should we warn the Thalzar they're walking into? No, Alira cut her off. Let them walk. 12 minutes passed like a countdown to judgment. The Thalzar arrived in force, sleek, cruel-looking ships shaped like razors, glowing with the Empire's signature violet pulse. 15 destroyers, 3 command barges, 2 carriers. Their flagship, the Dread Fong, was a beast of shimmering chrome and spike-like weapon arrays. The Thalzar wasted no time. Open frequencies lit up with arrogant declarations. This is Lord Commander Jath A.K. of the Thalzar Ascendancy. Unregistered vessels stand down. Identify yourselves or be annihilated. Alira almost pitied him. The Terrans didn't respond, not with words. Instead, the Erebus pulsed a blue-white beacon. 6 seconds later, the battlefield changed. The lead Terran vessel fired a kinetic lance. No visible beam, no colorful streak across the void, just a silent burst, followed by the instant, catastrophic implosion of a Thalzar destroyer. Not disabled. Deleted. Saran gasped. No warning shot. No targeting delay. Just gone. The next volley was surgical. Terran support ships moved like predators, silent and graceful despite their brutal frames. Railguns and plasma drills ripped through Thalzar shielding like mist. The Dread Fong retaliated, launching high-energy torpedoes. They never landed. The Erebus deployed countermeasures, thousands of metallic spheres that shimmered mid-space and bent physics around them. The torpedoes curved mid-flight and detonated harmlessly in a pocket of artificial gravity. "They're using..." Cale started, then stopped. "No, that's impossible. That's classified theoretical physics. Folding gravitic tensors like that would collapse. They're not limited by what we think is possible," Alira muttered. "They're beyond it." The Thalzar tried to retreat. Bad decision. The Erebus launched orbital spears, long-range singularity drivers. One by one, the Thalzar ships vanished, each one engulfed in a bloom of silent implosions. No light. No explosion. Just erasure. Within 90 seconds, the fleet was gone. Not a single Terran vessel scratched. The silence after the battle was louder than any scream. Alira sat down slowly in the command chair. "Report." Cale, pale, stammered. "Thalzar losses, total. All ships destroyed or unrecoverable. No survivors. No debris larger than a shuttle." Saran whispered. "We're looking at extinction-class force projection. I didn't think this level of power existed anymore." "They were never gone," Alira said. "Just sleeping." A final message came through. Same cold voice. "You are under temporary Terran protection. Prepare coordinates of occupied worlds for liberation. Fleet movement begins in 4 hours. Non-compliance with Terran directives will be interpreted as hostility. End transmission." Cale looked at Alira. "They're not asking us to follow. They're warning us not to get in the way." Alira nodded. "They don't save. They destroy the threat. That is their mercy." Saran crossed her arms. "So what now? They just move from world to world, turning the Empire to ash?" "No," Alira said softly. "They're sending a message. Not just to the Thalzar. To everyone who forgot what Earth is." That night, if time even mattered anymore in the frozen dark, Alira stood alone at the viewport again. She watched the Terran fleet scatter, forming spearpoints toward different star systems. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't pause for applause. Their path was fire. A soft chime echoed from her console. Private transmission. Encrypted. Terran source. She opened it. No face. Just text, white on black. "You called. We answered. We are not your heroes. We are what comes when justice sleeps too long. Stay behind us. Or burn with them." She exhaled slowly. Not fear. Not relief. Something else, something deep in her bones. Reckoning. The world of Dreenak Prime burned from orbit before its capital even had time to scream. Thalzar cities, once carved into living crystal, erupted under precision kinetic strikes. Towers that had pierced the upper atmosphere collapsed like sandcastles under a god's hand. Planetary defense grids, long the pride of the Empire, flickered and died with barely a Terran acknowledgement. From her observation deck aboard the Inevitable Light, Alira watched the Terrans purge the Thalzar stronghold with calculated precision. It wasn't war. It was a dissection. "Targets eliminated across all 5 continents," Cale reported. "Terran fire teams are on the ground. Resistance minimal." Saran stared at the screen, stunned. "Minimal? That planet had 2 million troops." "They didn't fight," Cale said. "They ran." The message was clear. Humanity had returned, not as diplomats, not as allies. They came as enforcers of an ancient, silent promise. Never again. Alira hadn't spoken much since the campaign began. There was no need. The Terrans said little. Their fleet was emotionless, methodical, terrifying in its restraint. They struck only military targets. No civilian zones. No cultural sites. No revenge, just eradication of force and infrastructure. And then, they moved on. Their warships were codenamed after mythology: Erebus, Thanatos, Moloch, Hecate. The Erebus remained at the front, its AI commander a ghostly voice named Helix. Helix only spoke to Alira once. "You requested help. The cost is obedience. You will not direct us. You will not interfere. Observe. Learn. Remember. She had agreed without hesitation. Now she stood aboard a Terran vessel, the Valkyrie. It was nothing like the organic, sleek bridges of her fleet. No windows. No comfort. Just dark metal corridors, glowing white overlays on every wall, floor, and bulkhead. A Marine stood beside her, taller than any human she'd seen. His name was Lieutenant Dax Merrick. His armor hissed with internal systems, the Terran emblem, a fractured star within a circle, burned into his chest plate. You people ever rest? She asked. Rest comes after control, Merrick replied, eyes behind a polarized visor. We establish dominance. Then we breathe. She hesitated. You speak like machines. We don't fight wars, Merrick said. We end them. They entered the command briefing room. A massive holomap hovered over the central dais, marked with red Thalzar sectors and glowing white Terran incursion lines. Already, a third of the Empire's core was falling. 78 strategic sites neutralized in 6 days, reported an emotionless AI voice. Projected collapse of Thalzar military command in 12 days. Alira couldn't help but whisper. 12, that's impossible. Incorrect. The AI corrected. It is optimal. A second Terran stepped forward. Female. High ranking. Her armor bore 4 red bars. A general? Alira Voss, the woman said, voice clipped but firm. General Adrian Ryle. You'll be coordinating civilian recovery ops. The cleanup. Ah, yes. Of course. Alira was still adjusting to their structure. Rank didn't feel like ego here. It felt like weight. Ryle studied her. You've seen their cruelty firsthand. We don't need convincing. What do you need? Compliance. Silence when necessary. And no attempts to humanize your enemies. The Thalzar will not be rehabilitated. They'll be erased. The words struck harder than expected. Not because they were cruel, but because they were calculated. Later, Alira observed the Terran ground forces in action. Dreenak's last garrison had bunkered in a shielded vault under a mountainside. The Terrans didn't storm it. They hacked its power core. The vault's roof imploded inward. Inside, surrender. All Thalzar officers. Kneeling. No shots fired. Just submission. Merrick stood over them, rifle idle. They're trained to break when they see us. Alira blinked. How? We broadcast footage from the Battle of Kratos 4 on loop. No voice. Just images. They understand now. She turned away, unsettled. Back on the inevitable light, Alira's officers reviewed incoming transmissions. Planet after planet surrendered. Thalzar colonies detonated their own stockpiles rather than face Terran invasion. Refugees poured into newly liberated systems. And always, behind it, was Earth. And yet, no human showed emotion. No cheers. No rage. No joy. They didn't return for celebration. They returned for balance. Aboard the Erebus, she finally met one of their strategists, Dr. Van Rau, pale, cybernetically enhanced, his left eye replaced by a glowing lens. You have questions, he said without preamble. Why now? She asked. Why not decades ago, when we screamed the first time? We weren't ready. Alira's fists clenched. People died waiting for you. They still are, Rouse said coldly. But now it ends. We are the cost of your survival. She shook her head. You speak like you're not even part of the galaxy anymore. He leaned closer. We're not. Before she left, she asked Helix, the ghostly AI voice, one final question. Why respond to our signal? Helix paused. Because you asked? And because the Thalzar forgot who taught them fear. The Thalzar Empire wasn't collapsing. It was evaporating. Whole systems were going dark, not from conquest, but from surrender. Governors self-destructed databanks. Admirals fled through uncharted wormholes. Generals broadcast pleas for mercy, to anyone but Earth. Alira Voss stood aboard a Terran command ship orbiting Tarsus 7, watching a strategic capital surrender without a single plasma exchange. The Thalzar warlord in command, Lord Varixalu, opened all planetary frequencies and declared unconditional capitulation. No resistance. No negotiation. He begged. And the Terrans said nothing. They didn't need to. This is psychological warfare beyond anything we've studied, Kale whispered, reviewing the data stream from the Terran Intel archives. They're not just defeating the Thalzar, they're haunting them. Saran nodded, pale. Every broadcast, every drone feed, it's carefully curated. Death, precision, silence. The Terrans aren't gloating. That's what's terrifying. Alira remained quiet. She'd seen too much now to doubt the method. The Terrans weren't winning battles. They were erasing fear from the resistance and implanting it into the Empire. In the briefing chamber, General Ryle gave her next orders. We need you to accompany Strike Team Vulture 3. Final stronghold on Grilax Minor. The Thalzar High Priesthood is there. It's a symbolic target. Alira frowned. You want me on the ground? Ryle didn't flinch. They won't fight a Terran detachment. But you? They'll think they have a chance. You're using me as bait. Correct. The bluntness was surgical. I'll go, Alira said. Ryle handed her a Terran combat transponder. You'll be observed. Monitored. Protected only if necessary. Understood. There was no ceremony. No good luck. Just next steps. The drop pod shook as it burned through Grilax's atmosphere. The Terran soldiers around her didn't flinch. No one spoke. Helmets locked, armor powered, minds synced via neurolinks. Their silence was intention. It was focus. Alira checked her sidearm, useless, likely, but it gave her something to hold. Merrick sat across from her, visor still dark. You scared? He asked. Are you? I've seen Terran orbital strikes from the ground. Nothing compares. Then why come? Because sometimes, he said, fear needs a face. They landed in the ruins of a once sacred Thalzar city. Massive spires once laced with glowing psionic channels now lay shattered. Statues of emperors and saints crumbled under dust and drone fire. Ash coated everything. In the distance, energy shields buzzed, weak, failing. 10 minutes, a soldier whispered. They'll know we're here. They already do, Merrick said. They entered the temple core, a black stone monolith laced with dying embers. Inside waited the last true believers of Thalzar supremacy. High priests in gold-veined robes. Psion warriors with eyes glowing purple. None of them spoke as the Terrans advanced. Until one did. You are not gods, the priest hissed at Alira. You are prey bearing wolves upon your back. Alira stepped forward. I was prey. Now I'm the warning. He sneered. The Terrans won't protect you. They consume everything. Behind her, Merrick raised his weapon. Incorrect. The moment broke in a flash of soundless energy. One Terran moved faster than Alira could process, disabling 3 Psion warriors with stun spears that never touched flesh, just shorted minds. Another activated a sonic scrambler that dropped the entire defensive choir. Within seconds, the temple core was secured. The priests surrendered, heads lowered. One sobbed. Merrick turned to Alira. Message received. What happens to them? She asked. We archive what they know. Then we burn what they worship. Back aboard the Erebus, Alira debriefed with Dr. Van Rau. His expression was unreadable, one human eye and one machine lens blinking asynchronously. You understand now? He asked. She nodded. You didn't come back for justice. You came back to end cycles. The galaxy breeds empires like infections. Most collapse. Some metastasize. This one went too far. What happens after you're done? He hesitated. We vanish. Again. Why? Because peace fears power. And we are only power now. She sat back. You used to be diplomats. Scientists. Artists. We still are, Rao said. But only when we aren't needed as fire. In the following weeks, Terran forces took over 20 more systems. Not with bombs. With presence. Entire Thalzar garrisons defected. Civil uprisings swelled behind the Terran shadow. Word spread like contagion, the humans are here. For the first time, Alira saw coalition banners rise again, resistance cells reactivated, citizens marched, planets reclaimed themselves. But always behind them, the Terran fleet hovered. Not leading. Watching. The galaxy was waking. And Earth had become the nightmare that warned it not to fall asleep again. The Terran fleet darkened the skies above Thalzar Prime. 1,000 ships formed a quiet halo over the Empire's heart, a world that had never been conquered, never even invaded. It shimmered with imperial pride, silver towers piercing the stratosphere, orbital rings gleaming with commerce and culture. It was beautiful. Untouched. It was about to end. Commander Alira Vaz stood aboard the Erebus, staring at the planet projected in the center of the war room. She'd been invited, but not welcomed. Observed, but not included. The humans didn't need her, but she had earned the right to witness. General Adrian Ryle stepped forward, hands behind her back, posture carved from stone. Final command center located beneath the Sovereign's spire, Ryle said. Shielded. Heavily reinforced. But it won't matter, Dr. Ven Rao added. Their emperor refuses to surrender. He still believes in hierarchy. In negotiation. In mercy. Ryle turned to Alira. You've seen what happens when we give tyrants time. I have, Alira said quietly. But a full bombardment, on a world this populated. Ryle didn't blink. The civilians voted with their silence. They upheld the Empire. They cheered when you burned. That doesn't make them combatants. No, Ryle said. But it makes them enablers. And enablers don't rebuild civilizations. They resurrect old ones. The countdown began. 30 Terran vessels aligned for kinetic descent. No energy weapons. No atomic payloads. Just pure mass, guided by gravity and vengeance. Shouldn't we try to breach and capture? Alira asked. Rao replied. We did. 10 minutes ago. They killed our envoys. Then mocked them on a public feed. Merrick stepped into the chamber, armor blackened from the last engagement. Permission to deploy? I want to be there when the spire falls. Ryle nodded. Granted. But don't bring back souvenirs. He grinned beneath his visor. No survivors, no souvenirs. From orbit, Alira watched the bombardment begin. It was not loud. There were no explosions in space, just the slow, terrible beauty of kinetic rods breaking through the atmosphere at terminal velocity. The first impact struck the palace grounds, reducing centuries of imperial grandeur to molten glass. The second ripped a canyon through the capital's heart. The third was aimed at the vault where the last Thalzar Council huddled. Every strike was exact. No collateral damage. Just precision extinction. Still, the Emperor survived. He broadcast a single message across all frequencies. Alira watched from the command deck as it flickered to life. The face of Lord General Korik Drake appeared, aged, proud, bleeding. You think this is justice? He hissed. This is madness. Earth was a virus, and we cured it. You are ghosts, held together by hatred. When you leave, we will rebuild. We always rebuild. Then, with surprising calm, he whispered, We never feared you. We pitied you. Helix, the AI voice of the Erebus, responded instantly. Error, misinterpretation. Clarification, Earth is not a virus. Earth is the vaccine. Ryle gave the order. Level the spire. The final kinetic rod descended. It struck the planet like a divine fist. The Sovereign Spire, once the tallest structure in the quadrant, folded inward, then vanished in a white pulse of silence. The last beacon of the Thalzar Empire winked out. And the galaxy exhaled. Alira stood at the viewport long after it was over. She didn't cheer. No one aboard the Erebus did. The Terrans had no room for celebration. They weren't liberators. They were reminders. Merrick approached, blood-stained and silent. You were right, Alira said. About what? They weren't ready for you. No one ever is. She looked at the ruined world below. So what now? He hesitated. Then, we leave. Fade again. You've changed everything. He nodded. We always do. The final message came 3 days later. Broadcast from Earth. Audio only. A woman's voice, ancient, calm, resolute. This concludes Terran Directive Omega. The threat has been neutralized. To the stars that remained silent, know this. We came when asked? We stayed only long enough to remind you. Do not build new empires atop the ashes of the old. Because next time, we will not wait to be called. Then, like mist, the Terran fleets vanished. No signature. No wake. No trail to follow. Just stories. Just warnings. Just silence. Years passed. Worlds healed. Coalitions grew. The galaxy shifted its gaze from empire to unity. But every child, in every school, learned one phrase. When Earth answers, it answers with fire and fury. And they never forgot. Not again.